Hello and welcome back to my channel. I love reading new releases. They are so fun. It's fun to be caught up in the hype of a new release or follow authors that I really enjoy that are releasing new books or being involved in the excitement in the online community. But I have to say, there are so many books that are not new releases, that are older books, that are just really good and well worth reading. So today I'm going to talk about some fictional books that you should read that are over 10 years old. We will start with the more recent and work our way back in time. In 2012, one of my favorite authors, Fredrik Backman, released the book A Man Called Ove. And this book, as the title suggests, is about a man named Ove who is a little bit grumpy and kind of going through some hard things in life. He likes his routine, he likes his quiet life. And a new family moves in next door and they end up talking and starting to share their lives. They end up becoming friends. This is a really powerful read of the power of friendship, reaching out to people, mental health, all of the great themes and characters that Fredrik Backman brings to his writing. In 2011, so going back 1 year, The Hypnotist Love Story by another one of my favorite authors, Liane Moriarty. I think I go back and forth as to which of Liane Moriarty's books are my favorites, but as of now, this is definitely one of my favorites of her books. This book follows the story of a woman named Ellen who is a hypnotherapist and her relationship to her boyfriend. She finds out that he is actually being stalked by his ex-girlfriend, and she ends up being very intrigued by this woman who is stalking her boyfriend. And she really wants to meet this woman. And as the last line in the Goodreads description says, Ellen doesn't know it, but she already has. This is the only decade where I will have more than one book, but I had a hard time picking some. So also in 2011 is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I read this book a handful of years ago, and this is one that I will never forget. I don't know why I picked it up because it's not a genre that I would typically have read, but this was a surprise 5-star read for me, and I ended up really enjoying it. It takes place in the year 2044 when virtual reality is pretty much everywhere. People spend their lives basically with virtual reality headsets. The main character, Wade Watts, really uses virtual reality as a way to kind of detach and work through some really hard things that are going on in his life. The creator of this virtual reality world, called Oasis, ends up dying. But upon his death, a video is released to the public that he had made stating that he left an Easter egg inside the Oasis somewhere. And the first person to find that Easter egg would be the person who inherits everything that he has. So people from all over the Oasis are now trying to find the clues and solve the puzzles and be the first to find this Easter egg, and Wade Watts is one of those people. Moving back to 1999, The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. This is a frequently banned book, and I read it myself for the first time 3 years ago, and I was blown away by how much this book impacted me. This book is about a high school student named Charlie, and it's basically about his life, navigating high school, navigating friendships, trying to make friends. And he is also grappling with a lot of personal things in his life related to mental health and a lot of trauma from his past related to bullying and abuse. The way this book handles a teenager's inner world and loneliness and what it means to try to make friends and what it's like to, at such a young age, have to deal with trauma from the past. This book is not necessarily an easy read, but it definitely impacted me. 1985, I would say The Handmaid's Tale. This is a dystopian novel by Margaret Atwood that takes place in a place called Gilead. Women who are fertile are called the handmaids, and they are basically forced to be servants to certain men in the community and to bear children for these men. This is a time when women were basically seen as the lowest class, as property, and tools to be used for whatever greater good people thought they should be used for. This book has a lot of great themes, particularly themes of control and oppression, specifically oppression towards women, and themes of resistance. And it is a very powerful read, in my opinion. I grew up in a religious cult, and this book felt in many ways very similar to how I was raised. Obviously, it was not all of the same extremes. It was not actually the government and all of these things, but it felt very real and very visceral. So this book was very triggering, but also very healing in a strange way. And I think it is a very powerful read that I would recommend almost anybody read. If you have the mental and emotional margin for this, it is a really good read. And I feel like in our current political climate, a very good read. Moving on to 1960, this is another banned book, and that is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This book takes place in Alabama in 1936, and the main characters of the story are 3 children, about 10 or so years old. And there are all of these stories about the mysterious Boo Radley who lives in this one house, and everyone is scared, and the kids are scared, they don't want to go. But over a period of, I think, a couple years, they start to kind of try to befriend this Boo Radley, and they leave little presents, and soon Boo starts leaving presents for them as well. So that is one of the plots going on there. Their father, who is named Atticus Finch, is a lawyer, and he is defending a man named Tom Robinson. He is a black man who was accused of attacking a white woman. This book deals with a lot of themes of race, racism, and racial inequality, what it means to stand up for what is right, what it means to get to know and befriend people who are different from you, what honesty means, but primarily it is a book about racism. It is another very powerful read. In 1947, we have Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank, yet another banned book, and these are the journal entries of Anne Frank, who was a young girl during the time of World War II and the Holocaust. She details various aspects of her life and when her family had to go into hiding because they were Jewish. Her family and another family were in hiding together, and she talks about what that was like. Another banned book that is well worth the read for the historical perspective and for what it was like for a young girl during this time. Moving on to 1938, I have Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I have read this book multiple times, and it is just a fun classic mystery. The main character, whose name is never even revealed in the story, somewhat on a whim ends up marrying someone named Max de Winter. When she arrives at his estate, she starts to meet the people on staff there, and she finds out that his first wife, who passed away, still has a very strong presence and a very strong hold over the people in this house. The main character is trying to befriend and get to know the people that she will be living with, but there's one person in particular, Mrs. Danvers, who just has no interest, and she is not happy that a new woman is in this house trying to be Mrs. De Winter. So the main character is trying to figure out what is going on. She's trying to establish herself as Max's new wife, but she keeps being met with resistance and sabotage, and it's very intriguing and it's a fun mystery. Moving to 1923 is one of my all-time favorite books, and that is Emily of New Moon by L.M. Montgomery. When the story opens, Emily is 8 years old. Her mother had passed away a number of years ago, and she's been raised by her father. But at the beginning of the book, her father also gets sick and passes away, and she has to go live with relatives. Now, these relatives, her only remaining relatives, none of them are too thrilled to have this family member that they now have to take care of. And they're all fighting over who should have to take her. She ends up going to her aunts and uncle who live on the New Moon farm. Her Aunt Elizabeth, who is a very strict person, and her Aunt Laura and Uncle Jimmy. Emily is a writer, and she writes poetry and journals and just has quite the way with words. She has a deep, rich inner life as she is processing and learning and trying to acclimate to this new place. I love Emily so much because she reminds me so much of me, and I related to her so much when I was younger. The way that she sees the world with such interest and beauty and joy and delight, and the way that she processes things internally, the way that she learns to stand up for herself and have a voice, and yeah, it's just a super fun story. Then in 1908, another book by L.M. Montgomery, and that is Anne of Green Gables. Anne is so dearly beloved by so many people, and it has a somewhat similar plot to Emily of New Moon. Anne is an orphan, and she ends up going to live with siblings Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert. Anne is very imaginative and has quite the flair for the dramatic and words and talking, and she just has this very big and bold personality. And the book is just about her coming to live with the Cuthberts, making friends, and of course her famous romance with Gilbert Blythe. I feel like Anne and Emily are very similar in personality in some respects. Anne is a lot more bold and vivacious, and Emily, I would say, is more of some of the similar characteristics as far as the imagination and love of writing and things like that, but she's possibly maybe the introverted version of Anne. Going back a few more years, in 1905 is The House of Mirth. I have made a video about this book in the past. I will link to that. This book is so good. Edith Wharton writes about a woman named Lily Bart, who is in a certain class in society, and in this class in society, it is normal to find a man, marry that man, have kids, and be rich. So there are lots of parties and events and get-togethers, but most of the men in this circle of society are either already married or Lily's just not that interested in. Soon her money starts to dwindle and she realizes she either has to settle for whichever man now will marry her and has money, or figure out what she actually really wants in life and see where that might take her. It is such a fascinating look at a woman doing what she needed to do in a time period where women weren't really allowed to have very many options. It had a lot of great social commentary for that time and, dare I say, even for today. Moving on to 1890, and that is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. The gist of this classic book is that Dorian Gray ends up having a portrait painted of him. He's a young man, he's very attractive and good looking and looks very youthful, and this portrait captures that so well. Dorian Gray ends up a little full of himself, and he decides that he can basically do whatever he wants and get away with it. So he starts living a less than moral or ethical life. As he keeps making these choices, he stays very young and youthful and attractive, while his portrait ends up aging him and basically showing how his life is going downhill. Again, a lot of great themes in this book, a lot of great commentary on life and beauty and morality and how things can corrupt a person. In 1886, we have The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. This book is mostly told from the point of view of a man named John Utterson and his good friend, Dr. Henry Jekyll, who is a scientist. Over the course of time, there ends up being a series of murders, and the suspected man is named Edward Hyde. Utterson starts to notice some very strange things with his friend, Dr. Jekyll, and he starts to be very concerned about what's going on because Dr. Jekyll just doesn't seem himself and he doesn't seem okay. Normally, I'm a big stickler on spoilers. However, this book has been out for quite some time and it is very well known. So if you don't want spoilers, you can skip ahead. But I'm assuming that most of us are probably relatively familiar with the general synopsis. As it turns out, Dr. Henry Jekyll was able to invent this drink that he can concoct, and when he takes it, he kind of becomes an alter ego, another person, this Mr. Hyde. And he basically splits himself into two people. When he's Mr. Hyde, he can go out and do whatever he wants, no repercussions. He can make horrible choices if he wants. All the things that he would not normally allow himself to do, he can do as Mr. Hyde. But when he's Dr. Jekyll, that is the good side of him, the moral side of him, the upright person. Again, a lot of great themes and things to think through and learn about and enjoy from this book. In 1855, one of my favorite books by Charles Dickens, and that is Little Dorrit. When the story opens, we find out that Mr. Dorrit has been in the debtor's prison for quite some time, and his daughter, Amy, or Little Dorrit, was actually born in that prison. Little Dorrit is a seamstress, and she has a sewing machine in the prison where she sews and tries to earn money in order to get her father out of prison. A lot of Dickens books deal with social class, and this book is no exception. It obviously has a lot of themes of debtors and debtors' prison, repaying debts, and things like that. And the last book, in 1848, another one of my favorite Dickens books, and that is Dombey and Son. I think this might actually be my favorite Dickens. It was Little Dorrit for the longest time, but I think Dombey and Son is my top favorite. Mr. Dombey runs a shipping company, and he was in the business with his father, and he always wanted a son that he could continue this Dombey and Son business with. Mr. Dombey does indeed have a son, But his son is very sick and he ends up quite ill and passes away. His only surviving child is a daughter. Mr. Dombey is not a fan of his daughter. So the story is about primarily the daughter and her living her life, trying to forge a life for herself and try to reconcile with her father. It is such a good read and a Dickens book that I don't often hear people talking about. So there is my list of 19 books that are 10 or more years older that I think you should read. I would love to hear in the comments books that you have enjoyed that are older than 10 years. Let me know some of your favorites. And until next time, happy reading.